another, and because probably many people haven't seen it before, we're going to give it. It's a good introduction to Windows security and just some of the attacks you might be seeing, and expanded a little bit on for Azure AD, which a lot of people are starting to use now. Basically, the most important thing that attackers do is they try to discover information about your environment, and by discovering information about your environment, they can decide on what's vulnerable, and also how to focus attacks. And the nice thing about it is the same tooling that attackers use to discover vulnerabilities and configuration issues in your environment is something that people you can use also. Some of the tooling that I'm just going to briefly go over is Powerview, which is a open source tool framework that has tons of functionality for just precisely querying your Windows environment and getting good information about it. There's another tool that's quite useful as well. It's called Bloodhound, and very easy to run. And this gives you a graphical visualization of the security of your whole entire Active Directory infrastructure. What hosts have what permissions, what users can access, weaknesses and permissions. It's very, you could query nodes. We'll go over a little bit, but it's quite a bunch of useful information. Really good for analyzing your environment. These tools can also be detected with domain control auditing, because they query the domain controller. So that's Object Access 4662. And there's another tool that's partially commercial, but can be for single organization use. Can be used. It's called Pink Castle, which is kind of like integrates like the other open source tooling, but is much easier to use. But definitely worth taking a look at. Gives you an incredible security view of your Windows Active Directory environment. So let's go a little bit into Powerview and what some of the things it can do. You can get and then one of the things that in the pen testing that we do is we try to find out who's in who's in certain domain groups, who's in domain admins are good, so we can target privileged users. So the nice thing about it is this tooling lets you take a look and see who's in what domain group, who's in domain admins group, and then you can audit to see whether this makes sense, because a lot of times we find domain admins groups has a lot of users in it that shouldn't be, and then it kind of creates a larger attack surface. So limiting a domain admin use and auditing that regularly is a good idea. So here's another little query you can do. This gets all users with passwords changed over a year ago. So this is something you can audit. You can audit your user base to see what user accounts have not changed their passwords. This is good to do periodically. And then if you want to find out what users have service accounts set, and the service accounts are often have weak passwords, and there's something called Kerberos, which takes advantage of that, and then you can crack those weak passwords and get domain access. Kerberos pre-authentication is also something that's important to take a look at. That's basically part of the whole service account thing, and if pre-authentication is not set, it makes it a lot easier to recover password hashes and password hashes and crack them. So yeah, did we do that? Yeah. So okay. So this is another really critical one. So service accounts and domain admins. Like if the service account in domain admins, you want to be very careful because if it's service account, a lot of times people will set database passwords and stuff with weak passwords because it's a service account, and then they put that in a domain admin. So if you have service accounts that have, and then oftentimes the passwords aren't reset. So if you have a lot of service accounts with domain admin privileges, like sometimes uh, backup software has this, so you want to really be knowledgeable, and then also you can look at all your GPO as well, and you can look at all the GPOs, see what permissions, group policies are assigned to what. This tooling lets you do that in a very easy way. There's also a C# version. Sometimes it's more on an attacker view. PowerShell is heavily audited and logged. So sometimes in certain environments, attackers will use a C# version of and this is SharpView, but it's very similar functionality. It just uses managed code rather than PowerShell to execute the same functionality. Then we talked a little bit about Bloodhound. Bloodhound is a visualization tool. You can use it to identify attack paths in AD. Shows you all your access control lists, users, groups, trust relationships, and unique AD object. You can see what Active Directory principals have control of other users and group objects to determine additional relationships. It doesn't really, and a nice thing about it doesn't require administrative privileges to run. And so you can enumerate your whole entire AD environment very easily. Attackers find this to be very useful. Yeah, it's in JSON files, and then it has a Git repository, which you can do the collection in C# or PowerShell. This is what it looks like. As you can see, tells you the users, the user is a member of what group. And then it also shows you the pathway. Like, let's say you want to get access to a domain admin. It shows you, a lot of times the way attackers work is they'll compromise a host and then collect credentials from that host. And as you can see, this host at the top has a session to a user, which is member of AD. It also has users that are members of another group that's an admin. That's an admin to that host as well. So you can see if you compromise that host as a user on the left-hand side, then you would have access to the credentials of a high-level users and domain admin. So this kind of lets you see where your exposures are. Very useful tool, both for attackers and defenders. Just some tips on Active Directory security operations. Always, when you set up and configure anything about Active Directory, you should always think about what functionality you're adding or configuring on it, and especially if there's any security implications. Domain controllers should have more than minimum auditing. You should increase the auditing on domain controllers. Out of the box, it's pretty limited. Password policy should be at least 12 to 15 characters. Anything less than that will get you into trouble with cracking. 8 characters passwords aren't even secure, regardless of the complexity anymore, because you can be cracked. Any 8 character Windows password can be cracked within 2 or 3 days, no matter how complex it is. There's services online that do that now. Don't use account operators at all, that group at all, because that's actually in the Microsoft documentation. Turn on auditing for adding and removing accounts. Audit Kerberos ticket granting service requests that use RC4. This is the Kerberosing issues. We'll go over into that a little bit. Make sure Kerberos pre-auth is turned on. Disable LMNR or WPAD. This is just stuff that attackers use to gain password hashes on your network. So if these are enabled, makes it very easy to collect credentials to crack off your network. Then there's some other issues around SMB relaying. So if you don't have SMB signing turned on some of your servers, attackers can relay credentials and get access without even having to crack the password. So it's an issue we've seen a lot in our pen tests, and we're trying to get everybody to clean that up. Implement LAPS, which is basically it lets you manage local administrator accounts on hosts, so that they're all different and strong. And this way, if one host gets compromised, that local administrator password is not shared across all the hosts, and makes it easy for attackers to pivot. Run Sysmon. Sysmon is basically the kind of an enhanced auditing tool that you should run on the Windows workstation. Also, if you were at our previous session, this is now integrated with Velociraptor, which makes it easy for you to deploy out to sensitive systems that you want to keep an eye on. Disable IPv6 DNS resolution on Windows clients unless IPv6 is used. This is something that basically you can attack the DNS forwarding on a local network, and then pretend you're IPv6 DNS server, and then force clients to connect and download code or do other things that basically, or steal their passwords, hashes. Problem is because Windows clients by default do IPv6 resolution before they ask for IPv6 DNS, before they do IPv4, so that if you're not running IPv6 DNS, attacker sets up a man-in-the-middle attack using IPv6 DNS. They can redirect your clients, and then you basically will ignore your normal IPv4 DNS. And do AD administration on as much as possible on separate workstations that are not used to connect to other servers, especially servers that other less privileged users attach to. And then you should also monitor the audit clearing of event log 1102. Okay, so let's try that. So that basically, if you see the event log being cleared, that's event 1102, that I would be very concerned. Okay, all right. The leading cause of compromise in an AD environment: GPO permissions, AD permissions. This is with delegation attacks, improper group nesting, over permission accounts, service accounts with domain admin access, Kerberos delegation, password vaults. If you have password vaults stored on machines, attackers will go for those. That you have to be very careful with password vaults, and then also AD backup. Remember the your AD backup has the hashes for every single account in the domain, and then if attackers get a hold of those hashes, and a lot of times AD backups aren't stored encrypted; they're stored on a server somewhere. Anybody gets access to that, your whole entire Active Directory is compromised. You can even get the KRB TGT ticket, which lets you create any Kerberos ticket you want for any user. It basically lets you impersonate any user in the domain. Okay, LAPS. I talked a little bit about this. This provides management of local account passwords, domain joined computers. Passwords stored in Active Directory and protected by access control list, so only eligible users can read or request its reset. This is so basically, if you need a password to do local administration, you could grab it from LAPS, and it manages all the local admin accounts, and so you don't have to worry about lateral movement, pivoting, and stuff like that as much if a host gets compromised. Yeah, this is just some stuff about LAPS, some of the stuff that you need to do, because it adds some attributes to your AD, and so you need to install some stuff. Yeah, it provides an AD schema intention, and this kind of talks about how to install that. This presentation is also available as a reference for people who are interested. Yeah, these are some of the more requirements for LAPS to execute LAPS. Um, yeah, more lab stuff. All right, so Kerberos. Okay, so this is an authentication scheme that's kind of the default now in Windows. And so after user authenticates through KDC, in the case of Windows domains, domain control, basically when you authenticate domain control, you get a TGT ticket once the user authenticates, and then that TGT is signed with the KRB TGT account, which is kind of like the root account of the domain. That's the root credential. Every AD domain has a KRB TGT hash. And that's what's used to sign the tickets. And then these tickets can be used to request service tickets for specific resources like, databases, file shares, connections to certain, Microsoft web servers, things like that. So, Microsoft services, whether they're Microsoft distributed or third-party distributed. So part of the service ticket is encrypted with the NTLM hash of the target service instance. So this is where you can get in trouble with service accounts, because service accounts, the ticket is encrypted with a service account hash, and if you get the ticket, then you can try to reverse that encryption, and then if the password is weak, it's pretty easy to reverse. So that's kind of this is kind of the Kerberos flow. We talked a little bit about it. Yeah, you log in and you request a TGT, you get a TGT, then you get a TGS request, and then all that stuff. Okay, so what's Kerberos thing? This is so each Windows service has something called a service principal name. So to enable authentication, Kerberos requires that service principal names be associated with at least one service logon account. So basically, this is an AD user account that's used to log into the service. When domain account is configured to run a service, such as MS SQL, a service principal name is used in the domain to associate service to login account. When the user wishes to use a specific resource to receive a Kerberos ticket signed with NTLM hash of the account. So anytime you set up a service like a SQL service or something, it's gonna use an SPN name, and that SPN name is associated with the domain user, which is the basic domain user service account. So the problem is that any valid domain user can request a service principal name for a registered service. Mostly in our testing, it's for people that are doing it for SQL and IIS, and then the service ticket can be taken offline and cracked. So a lot of times these service accounts are running as administrator or the server where it's running, and so this is an actual script. It's called get user SPNs, which you just run on the network, and then it collects all the service tickets that are available on the domain, and so then you can just grab them and just crack them offline. Basically, okay. So back to LNMR. LNMR is a protocol that allowed name resolution without the requirement of a DNS server. Is able to provide a host name to IP based off. Basically, it's a broadcast service, so that if your user is looking for a particular share, let's see here. Yeah, hold on. Actually, okay. So it's able to provide a host name to IP based. Okay, basically it's for broadcasting stuff. So basically, when a user is trying to access resources on the local LAN that's not in DNS, it's going to do a broadcast. And LMR's job is to tell the requester where the service is, so that they can find it. Problem is, there's attacker tools that can spoof this, and so that if the resource is not in DNS, LMR is enabled, the attacker can if you're looking for it, and you can't find it, LMR is going to broadcast, and then if attackers they're gonna tell you that they're the ones who have the service, and you're going to connect to it, and you're going to give it your network cache, and then that could be cracked. And also relayed, SMB relayed if the target is not SMB signed. So this is really critical to disable. It serves no purpose on networks, so you should not have this running. LMR should not have it running in your domain. All right, so WPAD, another one. It allows organizations to provide proxy settings to all devices connected to the network. It's enabled by default. Organization can place a WPAD configuration on a standard place, and when WPAD is enabled, your computer or other device checks to see if there's WPAD proxy information provided by the network. So this is another thing. The security tools could, if you don't have a WPAD set, the browser is going to look for one, and then the hacker tools can tell the browser where that it has a WPAD, and then it's going to try to authenticate to the proxy, and then you can grab its credentials and crack them. Once again, another thing to either disable or configure properly. So you can actually disable it on Windows 10, Windows 8 like this, disable WPAD. So generally this is something, if you're not using a WPAD specifically and don't have it configured, I would definitely disable it because it can be exploited. All right, Sysmon, nothing covers, very effective at detecting low-level events. Like we talked in the previous meeting, it's integrated with tools like Velociraptor for distribution. Integrates cleanly with most SIEM or Windows event collection environments. It logs the Windows event log, like that could be picked up by SIEMs or like the Velociraptor, like we showed. It can all make generate binaries of all everything that's running on the system, and then you can submit that to VirusTotal to see if there's any malware. Nice thing about it is it has end hashes as well, which lets you detect malware families across multiple machines. That's one of the nice things of Velociraptor, gives you ability to run Sysmon across all your hosts, and then get end hashes, and then you could see if there's any malware families that are similar running on any of your endpoints. Here are some of the things it can detect. Registry key value creation, deletion, modification, file create time modification, file create ADS, create WI event filters, different types of consumer activities, process creation, loading of drivers has come from malware, process creation, driver loads, image and DLL loads, recreate remote thread, name pipes, etc. So you're going to get a very granular representation of what's going on in the host with Sysmon. That's installing it. Threat hunting. We talked a little bit about this actually. So this is an older slide, but we've kind of updated this with Velociraptor, a little bit, a pretty good platform for this. So yeah, so we covered this in an earlier meeting. And then just a little bit about Azure AD Connect. Basically, we see a lot of colleges using this, and then they're installing, and then Azure AD uses an on-prem a user account, which is domain equivalent, and then sometimes we've seen some pen tests that users install this on less privileged workstations or unpatched workstations, and then basically you basically get into that workstation, and then you basically can use this privileged account, Azure AD Connect, as a domain admin to attack the local network, as well as extract credentials from Azure AD. And there's a lot of tooling now available, which we'll cover very briefly. It's actually protected. The Azure AD password, that's a domain admin password, is actually protected by DPAPI, which is a way to cryptographically encrypt local application data. But the problem is with DPAPI is the master keys in memory local to the machine that's running on. it's not that easy to recover, but it is recoverable. And just this is a little bit of how it's structured. There's a DPAPI. It's used to read the encrypted key and decrypt it. Let's see. And so yeah, so this is basically how it works with Azure AD Connect. Problem is there's tooling available to recover that. So this is a credential dumping tool. So you just go in there on the system where Azure AD is installed on, and then you go ahead and dump all the credentials that are protected by DPAPI. This is kind of what the dumping process is. Stops the AD sync service. That releases the lock on the MDF LDF database file, downloads the database files, restarts the service. So it actually interacts with this database to recover the key. Reads the data from the database files, extracts the DPA system encryption. So, as you can see, it's very complicated to do this by hand, but this tooling makes it pretty easy. To make a long story short, it lets you, the Azure AD password is actually encrypted in this MDF LDF database. But the problem is the key to that is stored in memory, and this tool lets you grab that key from memory, downloads the Azure AD sync service database, decrypts it, and then gets you the credentials of that AD domain. And all the Azure ADs are domain admin equivalents. So if you're able to compromise the machine and recover it, you have full access to everything. That's been changed a little bit. So is the AD sync is a virtual account, and then they're managed by Credential Manager, but it's changed a little bit here. But anyway, to make a long story short, the tooling has been updated, and you can now, even with the new process, you can dump the credentials from Azure AD. So this is actually used quite a lot by attackers. So something to keep an eye on. And then a little bit on. I know we talked about Powerview and how attackers are using tools like Powerview and Bloodhound to enumerate your environment, find out the weaknesses. And this is kind of stuff that's it's not detected by AV and stuff like that, because this is actual misconfigurations in your environment, right? So Powerview and this tooling gives you the ability to take a look at what's already there, and it's not malware. It's not vulnerable code that can be exploited. It's just misconfigurations or weaknesses in Windows that haven't been properly addressed. Or properly configured, or just lots of thought, things like that. So Azure AD is a cloud service, and it's not like regular AD. It's kind of like a custom. It can emulate AD, but it's completely custom. It doesn't follow the same rules. There's no LDAP, so you can't actually, like traditionally you could look at your Active Directory using LDAP queries to look to some analysis on it. Azure AD is no LDAP at all. If you're interested in Azure AD and how it's architected from a security perspective, I included a link to a really good presentation on that. Those are the details of Azure AD and security issues. There's also tooling now available for very similar to Bloodhound for regular AD, for Bloodhound for Azure AD, which gives you the same picture of how the security is inside the Azure AD service. It's very, very useful. Basically, here's the tooling for. It's called Recon. It's a tool that lets you dump the information in Azure AD database and sort of query it. Similar type of analysis as the Powerview tools. And then, attackers can use this to analyze your Azure AD environment and make sense of the permissions in there and use it for further internal attacks. This is kind of what it looks like. Yeah, this is basically it. So you can look at, it says you can actually go ahead and look at all the objects inside Azure AD, what roles, what type of principals, what they have access to, your enumerate applications, your service principals. We talked a little bit about service principals, and then to target the attack, similar, so that a lot of people have said, oh, we went to Azure AD, we're not using a local AD anymore, we don't have to worry about people enumerating our Active Directory, find out what the users are. So there's now tools available to attack Azure AD and enumerate Azure AD as well. So just keep something to keep an eye on. And so that's all I have for this. It's kind of a short kind of summary of AD security. Windows security and some of the best practices. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Larry, I have a quick question. This is Abir, related to securing AD. So I would like you to, so the golden ticket gives the attacker total and complete access to the entire domain.
The golden ticket, we talked about that. The golden ticket is just the ability to, when you compromise an Active Directory domain, there's this thing we looked at, it's called the KRB TGT, which is basically the credential that's used to sign all tickets in Active Directory. So when you request a ticket, that's signed by the KRB TGT. So what you can do, if you have the KRB TGT hash, which you can get from any Active Directory domain database, you can forge your own tickets. And they call it golden ticket because you can forge a ticket that's basically a domain admin has full access to everything in the domain. The problem here is when you create these golden tickets, if there's trust relationships between the different domains, improper trust relationships, you can also use that golden ticket to access other domains that are trusted. So that's basically the golden ticket.
What I was actually trying to get to is basically how to defend yourself against the golden ticket attack.
The best way to do it is like we discussed, is to lock down your AD, monitor it properly. Limit domain admins. You're basically trying to protect your domain database, because access to that is what provides a golden ticket, right? You gotta get access to the KRB TGT. So so protect anything you use to protect the Active Directory will protect you against the.
Yeah, I mean, you can also create some sort of access choke point for domain controller, or add another layer of protection. Yeah. A terminal server or something. I configure accept only administrative connection from the terminal.
Just be careful. Yeah, be careful with the amount of domain admins that you have. Audit that domain admins group. Limit the domain admins from logging into unprivileged workstations and servers. So those are just exposing domain admin accounts are required to access the AD database. Also, be careful, like we said before, be careful of your Active Directory backups. Don't put the Active Directory backups in insecure places, because that'll have the KRB TGT in it. So yeah, those just things like that.
Yeah, I think Craig has a question for you.
Sure.
Have you heard of Plumhound?
Heard about what?
Plumhound. I just heard about it last week. It's a purple team, hence the Plum add-on to Bloodhound, that it will take all the output out of Bloodhound and put it into a sort of a checklist for the blue teamers to fix what Bloodhound found.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it, but it sounds really good.
I think it was on one of John Strand stuff. It's like, wow.
John Strand,
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, actually, because if yeah, if you're using Bloodhound to check your permissions, which is a good idea.
Oh, los que tienen enfrente en your house, and they're all right.
Okay, Larry, if you want to unmute yourself and talk.
Yeah, so yeah, that sounds really good actually. I'm not aware of it, but that's something yeah. So if you're going to use Bloodhound to analyze your AD environment, yeah, then instead of having to manually sift through, I showed you that graph. It could get pretty complicated in large environments. It could give you some best practices to lock your AD down. Very, very good idea, actually. Bloodhound's great for analyzing your environment, finding out all the problems with your ACLs and GPOs, and user sort of administrative distribution, and problems with that. And then, yeah, and then if you're using Azure AD, hopefully you can use it with like the Azure AD, Bloodhound version as well. That would be really nice because there's very little guidance on locking down Azure AD right now. It's kind of wide open. So.
Any other questions? Someone?
Sounds like
One more.
somebody
Yeah,
has a non-English question.
That's okay.
So Larry, I have one more question about Azure AD. I've heard conflicting, I've heard that there is no user lockout feature in Azure AD so that brute forcers can try, and that Microsoft's official responses will turn on 2FA. But I've also seen some of our accounts get hit, and the error messages they're at least giving back to the attacker is the account's been locked out because you've tried too many times. Do you know which the truth is on that?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I think what it is I think the privileged accounts, like the admin account, is not that you use to configure it, is not, you can't lock it out. I think it's something like that. But I think certain lower level accounts you can lock out. I think it's something like that, but it'd be good to validate that.
I'm trying to figure out where the setting is too for how many tries, like the equivalent, how many lockouts, how long.
So I could take a look at that and see if I
thought maybe if you knew off the top of my head.
I don't know off the top of my head, but that's a good to point out, and something.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, if somebody has a question in Spanish or some other language, I guess they can put in a chat window. We can try to answer that, get it to the right folks. But so, if we can get it answered, we'll do it. Thank you.
I don't see a chat window, Amir.
Oh.
But yeah, so what, like I said, so this stuff that we showed in this presentation, we actually check all this stuff in our pen tests, and we're always adding the latest attacks and stuff. So our reports cover a lot of these issues that we go over here. So that's available to all the colleges. So just something to mention.
All right, so I think we are done with this presentation. Umar, you want to pull up the schedule and make sure that you're able to receive messages from people?